The great hall of Nexus Prime stretched out like a vast cathedral made of metal and glass. Stars glittered through the massive windows that formed the ceiling. 12 different species sat in their assigned sections, their alien forms creating strange shadows in the blue light. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked slowly down the center aisle. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. She wore a simple black suit, nothing fancy. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She looked calm, but inside her heart was beating fast. The other ambassadors watched her walk. Some had many eyes. Others had none at all. The Kretal looked like giant insects with sharp teeth. The Merdalim were blue and wet, breathing through masks filled with water. The Sharnath looked like walking crystals that sang when they moved. Sarah reached the small podium in the center. It was meant for defendants, people who had done something wrong. She sat down and placed her hands on the smooth surface. Council Speaker Vexithara rose from his throne. He was twice as tall as Sarah and covered in black armor that was actually his skin. His forearms moved as he spoke. His voice was deep and echoed through the hall. "The emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in order," he said. "We are here to address the crimes of the human species." Sarah said nothing. She had been trained for this moment. Her government had told her exactly what to do. Stay calm, listen, record everything. Wait for instructions from Earth. Vexithara picked up a crystal tablet. The charges began. "First charge," he announced. "Unauthorized expansion beyond approved sectors. Humans have built 17 colonies in forbidden space without council permission." The Merdalim ambassador made a wet clicking sound. It meant agreement in their language. Second charge, violation of the Controlled Development Accords. Humans have advanced their technology too quickly, without proper oversight. More clicking from different sections. The ethereals, who looked like glowing clouds, pulsed with approval. Third charge, dangerous independence. Humans refused to accept guidance from older, wiser species. Sarah watched as one by one, each species voiced their agreement with the charges. The Zephyrians flashed their lights. The Void Walkers hummed in harmony. Even the normally quiet stone speakers rumbled their approval. She was alone. One human against 12 alien species. Vexithara continued reading. Humans have developed weapons without approval. They have created new forms of faster-than-light travel. They have shared technology with species outside the Council. They have acted without permission time and time again. The charges went on for an hour. Sarah listened to each one. Some were true, some were lies, some were twisted versions of the truth. But she said nothing. Finally, Vexithara set down the tablet. "The Council has reached a decision. To prevent further chaos, humanity must be controlled." He pointed one of his forearms at Sarah. "These are our demands. First, all human. Colonies beyond approved space must be abandoned immediately. The people will return to Earth." Sarah made a note on her datapad. "Second, all human faster-than-light ships must be turned over to Council forces. This technology is too dangerous for humans to control." Another note. "Third, all human research and development will be supervised by Kretal scientists. No new technology may be created without approval." Sarah's pen stopped moving for just a moment. Then she continued writing. "Fourth, Earth will accept a Council garrison. 1,000 Kretal warriors will be stationed on your homeworld to ensure compliance." The hall was completely quiet. Every being in the room was watching Sarah. They expected her to argue, to plead, to become angry. Instead, she just kept writing. Vexithara's mandibles clicked together. This was not the reaction he had expected. "Do you understand what we are offering you, human? We could simply declare your species a threat and be done with. Instead, we offer you a chance to grow under proper guidance." Sarah looked up from her notes. Her voice was steady and calm. "I understand perfectly, Speaker Vexithara." "Then you accept?" "I cannot accept or reject these demands. That decision belongs to my government on Earth. I request 48 hours to consult with my superiors." The Sharnath representative chimed like wind through crystals. 48 hours seems reasonable, it sang. Very well, Vexathera said. You have 48 hours. But understand this, Ambassador Chen. No species has ever survived isolation from the galactic community. No species has ever prospered alone. Accept our guidance or face the consequences. Sarah stood and bowed slightly. Thank you for your time, honored representatives. I will contact Earth immediately. She walked back down the long aisle. Behind her, the alien representatives began talking among themselves. Their voices mixed together in a symphony of clicks, hums, chimes, and bubbles. Sarah reached her quarters 3 levels down from the main hall. They were small but comfortable. A bed, a desk, a communications array, and a small window looking out at space. She sat at the desk and activated the quantum communicator. The message to Earth would take 6 hours to arrive. The response would take another 6 hours to return. She had 36 hours to wait. She typed her report carefully. Every word mattered. Every detail could be important. She described the charges, the demands, the mood in the council chamber. She noted which species had spoken against humanity and which had remained silent. Then she added her personal observations. The council genuinely believes they are being generous. They see these demands as a gift, not a punishment. They expect gratitude. She paused, thinking about what else to include. They have no understanding of human nature. They do not realize what they are asking us to give up. They think we will choose survival over freedom. Sarah sent the message, and then sat back in her chair. Through her small window, she could see Earth's sun. It was just a bright star among many, but it was home. On Earth, people were going about their daily lives. Children were going to school. Scientists were making discoveries. Artists were creating beautiful things. Engineers were building ships that could cross the galaxy in days instead of years. All of that would stop if humanity accepted the Council's demands. Earth would become a prison planet. Humans would become pets of the Cretal. Sarah knew what Earth's answer would be. She had worked for the government for 15 years. She knew how humans thought. She knew how they reacted to threats. The council representatives thought 48 hours was plenty of time for humanity to realize they had no choice. They were wrong. 48 hours was exactly enough time for humanity to prepare for war. But Sarah suspected her government had something else in mind, something the council would never expect, something that would surprise every alien species in the galaxy. She settled in to wait for Earth's response. Outside her window, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that the balance of power in the galaxy was about to change forever. 47 hours later, Sarah Chen walked back into the Great Hall of Nexus Prime. This time, the galleries were packed. Representatives from dozens of minor species had come to watch. They whispered to each other in excitement. They wanted to see the mighty humans brought low. The major council species sat in their places, looking confident. Vexathara's forearms were folded across his chest. The Mer de Lam ambassador was almost glowing with satisfaction. Even the usually expressionless ethereals seemed pleased with themselves. Sarah carried only a single data pad. She walked to the defendant's podium just like before. But something was different about her. She moved with purpose now. Her shoulders were straight. Her eyes were clear. She reached the podium and stood quietly, waiting. Vexathara rose from his throne. Ambassador Chen, we trust you bring good news from Earth. Have your leaders accepted our generous terms? Sarah looked up at the towering insect. Speaker Vexathara, honored representatives of the Galactic Council, I bring Earth's response to your ultimatum. The hall fell silent. Every being leaned forward to hear humanity's surrender. Sarah's voice carried clearly through the vast space. Humanity respectfully declines. Good day. For 30 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence was so complete that Sarah could hear the air circulation systems humming. Then Vexathara's mandibles began clicking rapidly. It was a sign of confusion among his species. Ambassador Chen, surely you misunderstand. We are not offering you a choice. We are offering you survival. Sarah placed her data pad on the podium. Speaker Vexathara, I understand perfectly. That is why I must inform you that effective immediately, the United Earth government withdraws from the Galactic Council. Gasps echoed through the hall. The Zephyrians flashed their lights in alarm. The Sharneth chimed in discord, but Sarah was not finished. All human diplomatic staff will depart Council space within 12 hours. All trade agreements between humanity and Council species are hereby terminated. All joint research projects are suspended indefinitely. The Myrtleom ambassador made a sound like a whale in distress. But the trade routes, the shipping contracts, you cannot simply... Sarah continued as if she had not been interrupted. All human colonies will cease communication with Council species. All human ships will avoid Council space. She gestured to the datapad. The coordinates of every human settlement, installation, and ship currently in Council space are contained in that device. We will evacuate these areas within 30 standard days to avoid any complications. The hall erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted questions in a dozen languages. Some demanded explanations. Others insisted this was impossible. Through it all, Sarah stood calmly at the podium. When the noise finally died down, she spoke again. The United Earth government thanks the Council for the many years of cooperation. We wish you well in your future endeavors. She turned and walked toward the exit. Wait, Vexithara's voice boomed through the hall. You cannot survive alone. No species has ever... Sarah stopped and looked back over her shoulder. Speaker Vexithara, with respect, no species has ever tried. Then she was gone, walking down the corridor toward the docking bays where her ship waited. Behind her, the council chamber descended into chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. Some demanded immediate action. Others called for calm. The ethereals pulsed with confusion. The stone speakers rumbled ominously. But even as they argued, they could see human ships through the great windows. One by one, sleek vessels were departing from Nexus Prime. The evacuation had already begun. Across Council space, the same scene played out on thousands of worlds. Human diplomats packed their belongings and departed. Human traders canceled their contracts and loaded their cargo holds. Human scientists downloaded their research and erased their databases. On the mining world of Kepler-7, human engineers shut down the excavation equipment they had designed. The local Zephyrian foreman watched in confusion as the humans handed him instruction manuals and wished him luck. But how do we maintain the quantum resonators? He asked. The lead engineer shrugged. The manual explains everything. You'll figure it out. On the research station orbiting Vega Prime, Dr. Elena Vasquez finished copying her files. Her Sharneth colleague watched with growing alarm. But the dark matter project, it chimed. We are so close to a breakthrough. The equations you developed, Elena looked up from her work, are all in the files I'm transferring to you. The math is solid. You don't need me to finish it. But as Elena walked away, the Sharneth knew something was missing. The equations worked on paper, but Elena had always found the intuitive leaps that made them work in practice. Without her, the project might take decades to complete instead of months. On the trade station at Wolf 359, Captain Marcus Rodriguez supervised the loading of his cargo ship. A Mir Dalam merchant swam up to him in obvious distress. But our contract, it gurgled through its breathing mask. We have been partners for 7 years. Marcus sealed the last cargo container. Contracts terminated, friend. Nothing personal, new orders from Earth. But who will handle the shipping routes through the Maelstrom sector? Only human navigators can calculate those jump paths. Marcus climbed into his ship. I'm sure you'll work something out. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. Humans packed up and left. They took only what belonged to them. They left behind buildings they had constructed, systems they had designed, and knowledge they had shared freely. Most disturbing to the watching aliens was the humans' attitude. They showed no anger, no defiance, no bitterness. They were polite, professional, and completely determined. They simply left. Within 72 hours, the exodus was complete. Not a single human remained in council space. Trade routes that had operated for decades suddenly had no operators. Research projects that had run for years suddenly had no researchers. Mining operations that had fed entire worlds suddenly had no engineers. The council called another emergency session. This time, the mood was very different. The confident satisfaction was gone, replaced by growing unease. Perhaps we acted hastily, suggested the ethereal representative. The humans may reconsider if we modify our terms. Vexithara's 4 arms gestured dismissively. They will be back within a month. No species can survive in isolation. They will return begging for our forgiveness. But privately, he was not so confident. In all his years of service, he had never seen a species react like this. Most species fought back when threatened. Others pleaded for mercy. Some tried to negotiate. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had simply walked away. 3 weeks after the exodus began, the first communication was sent to Earth. It was a formal request for renewed diplomatic contact. The message was polite, but firm. The response came back quickly. The United Earth government appreciates the Council's interest in renewed relations. However, Earth is not interested in rejoining the Council under its current structure. We wish you well. More messages followed. Offers of modified terms, promises of better treatment, requests for specific types of assistance. The responses were always the same: polite, respectful, and absolutely final. The humans were not coming back. 6 months after the humans left, Foreman Zixtal stood in the center of Mining Complex 7 on Kepler 7. Around him, massive excavation machines sat silent and broken. The quantum resonators that powered them had failed 3 days ago. He held the instruction manual the human engineers had left behind. The document was thorough. It explained every component, every process, every safety procedure. But somehow, the machines still would not work. "Did you follow Procedure 17C?" asked his assistant, a young Zephyrian named Killmoth Zixtal. Flashed his lights in frustration. "Yes, 17C and 17D and every other procedure in this cursed manual." They had tried everything. The power readings were correct. The quantum fields were stable. The resonators hummed with energy. But when they tried to start the excavation process, the machines simply stopped working. "Maybe we should contact the humans," Killmoth suggested quietly. "The Council forbids any contact with the humans," Zixtal replied. "We must solve this ourselves." But deep down, he knew the truth. The humans had not just operated these machines. They had understood them in a way that could not be written in any manual. They had made tiny adjustments, subtle modifications, and intuitive decisions that kept everything running smoothly. Now those humans were gone, and Zixtal was discovering that understanding a machine and truly knowing it were two very different things. 3 sectors away, Captain Morteth of the Galactic Trade Commission stared at her holographic displays in growing frustration. The shipping routes that had operated flawlessly for years were developing problems. Ships were arriving late. Cargo was being damaged. Fuel costs were rising steadily. Most disturbing of all, she could not figure out why. The routes themselves were unchanged. The same ships traveled the same paths at the same speeds, but somehow efficiency was dropping every week. Her navigation officer, a crystalline Sharneth, chimed softly. "Captain, I believe I have identified the issue." "Explain," Morteth said, her tentacles writhing with impatience. The route algorithms were originally designed by human mathematicians. They accounted for variables that our systems do not track. Morteth's large eyes focused on the Sharneth. "What variables?" "Solar wind fluctuations, gravitational microvariations, quantum field drift." The humans somehow factored in dozens of tiny changes that affect jump calculations. The captain felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. "Can we modify our systems to account for these variables?" "Theoretically, yes, but it would take years to identify all the factors the humans considered. Their algorithms were based on intuition as much as mathematics." On the other side of Council space, Dr. Kailethi floated in her laboratory, surrounded by failed experiments. The quantum field manipulation technology that had been humanity's gift to the galaxy was falling apart. The shield generators still worked, but their efficiency was dropping. The power consumption was increasing. Most disturbing of all, she could not determine why. Her research partner had been Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human scientist who had evacuated 6 months ago. Together, they had made breakthrough after breakthrough. Elena had always found ways to make the theoretical work in practice. Now Kylothy was alone with equations that worked on paper, but failed in reality. The mathematics were correct. The theory was sound, but something was missing. She played back a recording of her last conversation with Elena. The human woman was explaining a modification to the field harmonics. "You see," Elena's voice said. "The math says this should work, but in practice you need to adjust for quantum foam fluctuations. It's not something you can calculate exactly. You have to feel it. Feel it." Kylothy had thought Elena was being poetic. Now she realized the human had been trying to explain something that could not be taught in formulas. Across council space, similar problems were emerging. Atmospheric processors designed by humans were becoming less efficient. Transportation systems were developing glitches. Even simple farming equipment was behaving strangely. The council had assumed that human technology could be operated by anyone who read the manuals. They were discovering that human engineering was more art than science. In the emergency council session, the mood was grim. Representatives who had been confident 6 months ago now looked worried. "The economic losses are significant," reported the Galactic Trade Commission representative. "Shipping efficiency is down 18%. Some trade routes are no longer profitable." The mining guild representative flashed his lights in distress. 7 major mining operations have shut down completely. The equipment simply will not function without human oversight. Vexithara's mandibles clicked rapidly. "These are temporary setbacks. We will adapt. We will learn." But privately, he was beginning to understand the scope of the problem. Humans had not just participated in galactic civilization, they had become essential to its operation. The ethereal representative pulsed with concern. "We may have underestimated human contributions to our society." "Impossible," Vexithara insisted. "They were junior partners at best, useful but not essential." The Sharneth representative chimed disagreement. "Speaker Vexithara, with respect, our analysis suggests otherwise. Humans were involved in nearly every major technological advancement of the past century." "As junior partners," Vexithara repeated. "As essential partners," the Sharneth corrected. They possessed an ability to bridge the gap between theory and practice that appears to be unique among galactic species. The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was becoming clear. The council had made a terrible mistake. The first attempt at diplomatic contact was subtle. A trade delegation from the neutral Andorian Republic visited human space. Their real mission was to gauge humanity's willingness to return to council space. The response was polite, but firm. Humanity was not interested in rejoining the council under its current structure. They bore no ill will toward any species, but they had chosen a different path. More attempts followed. Offers of full membership without restrictions, promises of equal representation, requests for specific technological assistance. The responses were always the same: polite, respectful, and final. Meanwhile, reports were coming in about human activities outside council space. New colonies were being established. Trade agreements were being signed with non-council species. Research was continuing at an accelerated pace. Most disturbing of all, humans were sharing their technology freely with anyone who asked. Species that had been ignored by the council were suddenly developing advanced capabilities. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and the council was no longer at the center of it. In her quarters on Nexus Prime, former Ambassador Sarah Chen's replacement, a nervous young diplomat named Williams, received his daily briefing from Earth. The message was always the same: be polite, be respectful, but make it clear that humanity had moved on. Williams often wondered what would happen if the council truly needed human help. If some crisis emerged that only human ingenuity could solve. He suspected he would find out soon enough. The reports, coming in from across council space, were increasingly urgent. Systems were failing. Efficiency was dropping. Problems were mounting that no one seemed able to solve. The humans had walked away in silence, but their absence was becoming louder. Every day. The first warning came from the Deep Space Monitoring Station at Grid 7. Sensor operator Thekanal noticed an unusual distortion in subspace readings. At first, it looked like equipment malfunction. The patterns made no sense. Then the readings intensified. The distortion was growing, and it was moving. Thekanal contacted his supervisor, a veteran Cretal named Vixmorn. Together they studied the data. Neither had seen anything like it before. Contact the archive, Vixmorn ordered. Cross-reference these readings with all known phenomena. The archive was the galaxy's greatest library, maintained by the ancient stone speakers. If anyone had records of similar events, they would. The response came back within hours. 3 words that chilled both operators to their cores. Void storm, imminent. Void storms were legendary disasters. They occurred perhaps once in 1,000 years. They tore through space itself, destroying everything in their path. Ships, planets, entire star systems could be consumed by the chaotic energies. The last recorded void storm had occurred 700 years ago. It had destroyed an entire sector, wiping out 2 civilizations completely. Now another one was forming, and it was heading directly toward the Kepler sector. Emergency broadcasts went out across the galaxy. 3 star systems lay in the storm's path. The worlds of Kepler Prime, New Vega, and Haven Colony. Nearly 2 billion beings called these systems home. They had 18 hours to evacuate. The evacuation fleet assembled with desperate speed. Ships came from across Council space. Massive cargo haulers, passenger liners, even military vessels, pressed into service. It was the largest rescue operation in galactic history, but from the first moment, nothing went according to plan. The lead navigation ship, the Cretal vessel Dominance, made its first jump toward Kepler Prime. It emerged, 3 light-years off course, nearly colliding with an asteroid field. "Recalculate," Captain Vorthak commanded. "Check all systems." His navigation officer's voice was tight with stress. "All systems are functioning normally, Captain, but the jump calculations, they don't account for void storm interference." Vorthak felt ice in his veins. "Contact the Navigation Guild. We need their best mathematicians." The response was not reassuring. "Captain, our standard algorithms cannot compensate for void storm effects. The human-developed chaos navigation protocols would be needed for accurate calculations in these conditions. Then adapt them." "Sir, we never fully understood how those protocols worked. The human mathematicians who created them described their methods as intuitive approximation of chaotic variables. We cannot replicate intuitive processes." While the Dominant struggled with navigation, other ships in the fleet faced their own disasters. The passenger liner Harmony's Hope suffered a cascade failure in its life support systems. The atmospheric processors that kept thousands of beings alive began shutting down one by one. Chief Engineer Silara frantically checked the maintenance logs. The systems had been jointly designed by Myrdalam and human engineers. The Myrdalam understood the basic functions, but the humans had added refinements that no one else fully grasped. "Why are the backup systems not activating?" she demanded. Her assistant consulted the technical manuals. "According to the documentation, they should activate automatically when primary systems fail. But there are dozens of subsystem interactions that are not fully explained." Meanwhile, the cargo hauler Deep Space Unity attempted to load refugees from Haven Colony. But its docking systems, originally designed with human input, kept malfunctioning. Docking clamps would engage and then suddenly release. Loading ramps would extend halfway and stop. Captain Mordun of the Unity watched in frustration as precious minutes ticked by. These systems worked perfectly for 20 years. What changed? His engineering officer provided the unwelcome answer. "Sir, maintenance logs show that human technicians performed regular adjustments to the docking systems, tiny modifications that compensated for wear and environmental factors. Without those adjustments, the systems are failing," Mordun finished, grimly. Across the evacuation fleet, similar problems multiplied. Navigation errors became common. Life support systems failed randomly. Communication arrays developed interference. Emergency equipment malfunctioned at critical moments. Ships collided during docking procedures. Others jumped to wrong coordinates, wasting precious fuel and time. 6 vessels vanished completely into the void storm itself when their navigation systems miscalculated jump points. On the surface of Kepler Prime, millions of beings watched the sky with growing terror. The evacuation was failing. Ships that should have been loading refugees were drifting helplessly in space. Others had disappeared entirely. In the council chambers on Nexus Prime, emergency sessions ran continuously. Representatives shouted at each other in panic and frustration. "We need human assistance," declared the Sharneth representative. "They created the navigation protocols we need." Vexithera's mandibles clicked angrily. "Absolutely not. We will not crawl back to them begging for help." "Then how do you propose we save 2 billion lives?" the ethereal representative pulsed. The argument raged for hours while the void storm grew stronger. Finally, with less than 6 hours remaining, even Vexithera was forced to admit defeat. "Send a message to Earth," he said quietly. "Request immediate assistance." The message was transmitted on all frequencies. It was brief and desperate. "Emergency. Void storm approaching Kepler sector. Evacuation failing. Request immediate navigation and technical assistance. 2 billion lives at stake." The response came back in less than 30 minutes. It arrived not as an official government transmission, but as a public broadcast on all civilian frequencies. The data package was massive. Navigation algorithms specifically designed for void storm conditions, life support system modifications, docking procedure corrections, emergency equipment protocols, everything the evacuation fleet needed to save the threatened populations. But attached to the technical data was a brief message. Humanitarian aid provided without conditions or expectations. Good luck to all involved. Earth wishes success in the rescue operation. The evacuation fleet immediately implemented the human protocols. Navigation became precise. Life support systems stabilized. Docking procedures operated flawlessly. In 8 hours, they successfully evacuated 1.8 billion beings from the 3 threatened star systems. It was the largest rescue operation in galactic history. The void storm arrived exactly on schedule. It consumed the 3 star systems completely, leaving nothing but twisted space and deadly radiation. But the worlds were empty. Nearly everyone had been saved. In the aftermath, as refugee ships scattered across the galaxy to find new homes, the Council sat in emergency session once again. "The humans saved us," the Meridal representative said quietly. "Without their assistance, 2 billion beings would have died." "They could have demanded anything," added the Sharneth representative. "Readmission to the Council, favorable trade agreements, political concessions. Instead, they asked for nothing." Vexithera was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "Send a message of gratitude to Earth. Thank them for their assistance." The response came back quickly. It was polite and brief. "Earth is pleased that the evacuation was successful. We are honored to have been able to help." That was all. No demands, no conditions, no attempt to use the crisis for political advantage. As the representatives filed out of the council chamber, many were thinking the same uncomfortable thoughts. They had tried to control humanity because they feared human ambition and independence. But when faced with genuine crisis, humans had responded with nothing but generosity. The council had demanded humanity submit to their authority or face isolation. Humanity had chosen isolation and thrived. When the council faced disaster, humans had helped anyway. The question that haunted many representatives was simple. Who had really been civilized in this exchange? The species that demanded submission through threats, or the species that offered help without conditions? The answer was becoming uncomfortably clear. 2 years had passed since the humans walked away. The Galactic Council was learning to function without them, though not well. Trade efficiency remained low. Technology development had slowed dramatically. Several mining operations had never resumed after equipment failures, but they were surviving. Vexathera told himself this every day. The Council was proving that they did not need humanity. Then the reports started coming in from the Outer Rim. The first attack hit the border world of Threshold 7. The planet's defense satellites were destroyed in minutes by weapons no one recognized. The attackers identified themselves with a single word: hegemony. Within days, a dozen more worlds reported similar attacks. The pattern was always the same: swift, devastating strikes that overwhelmed local defenses, then occupation forces that seemed to know exactly how to exploit weaknesses in Council technology. The hegemony was an alliance of species from the galaxy's edge, races that the Council had always considered too primitive to be threats. The Rakthul with their savage fleet tactics, the Ventar who fought like berserkers, the cold, calculating Nexus Collective. For centuries, these species had been kept in check by the Council's technological superiority. Their fleets were faster, their weapons more powerful, their defenses impenetrable. But that superiority was eroding. Fleet Admiral Korath Tel of the Kretal Navy studied the battle reports from Threshold 7. The attacking force had used swarm, tactics that exploited a known weakness in Council shield technology, a weakness that human military advisors had identified and helped correct years ago. How did they know about the shield harmonics vulnerability? He demanded. His intelligence officer's response was disturbing. Sir, this information was widely known during the Human-Council partnership. After the humans departed, we never implemented their recommended fixes. Why not? The modifications required human-designed quantum processors. We could not manufacture them without human technical assistance. Similar revelations emerged from each battle. The hegemony forces seemed to have detailed intelligence about every weakness in Council defenses, weaknesses that had been addressed when humans were partners but had been ignored after their departure. The attacks escalated quickly. Within weeks, the hegemony controlled 50 border systems. Their fleets pressed deeper into Council space. With each victory, emergency defense fleets assembled to meet the threat. The pride of the Council Navy, led by the massive battleship Eternal Dominion, engaged the hegemony forces at the Vale Nebula. The battle was a disaster. Council ships, designed for overwhelming firepower against single targets, found themselves helpless against hegemony swarm tactics. Enemy fighters swarmed around the massive vessels like insects, targeting weak points that had been identified by human strategists decades earlier. The Eternal Dominion itself was crippled when hegemony forces used a tactic called quantum threading, a maneuver that human naval advisors had specifically warned about. Council captains had never bothered to learn the counter-strategies. As reports of defeat poured in, panic spread through Council space. The crystal cities of the Sharneth began evacuating their populations. Merdal colonies started broadcasting surrender messages. Even mighty Kretal hive worlds prepared for siege. In the Council chambers, the emergency session was unlike any in galactic history. Representatives who had once been proud and confident now spoke in desperate whispers. Our fleets are being destroyed, reported Admiral Korath Tel. The enemy knows our weaknesses better than we do. What about the defense protocols? Asked the Sharneth representative. The strategic databases? Incomplete without human input, the Admiral replied grimly. We have the documents they left behind, but not the understanding to implement them properly. The ethereal representative pulsed with barely contained panic. Then we must contact Earth immediately, request military assistance. Vexathara's mandibles clicked in agitation. We cannot. It would be an admission of complete failure. Better failure than extinction, the Merdal representative gurgled. The debate raged for hours while hegemony forces advanced deeper into Council territory. Finally, with enemy fleets only days away from major population centers, Vexathara authorized the message. It was sent on emergency frequencies to Earth. The Galactic Council requests immediate military assistance against hegemony aggression. Council forces are overwhelmed. Urgent aid required. The response arrived within hours. The United Earth government recognizes the sovereignty of all species to defend themselves as they see fit. However, Earth cannot provide military assistance to the Galactic Council as we are no longer members of that organization. We wish you success in your endeavors. The message was polite, formal, and absolutely final. But attached to the official response was something unexpected. A series of public broadcasts from human space, transmitted on all civilian frequencies. Any refugees from the current conflict are welcome in human colonies regardless of species. We offer sanctuary to all who need it. Safe passage guaranteed through human space. The irony was bitter. The species that had tried to constrain humanity now faced extinction, and humanity's response was to offer shelter to their former oppressors. Within days, refugee fleets began arriving at the borders of human space. Sharnath crystal ships carrying entire families, Myrdal transport vessels filled with children, even proud Kretal warships, damaged and defeated, requesting sanctuary. At the border station of Haven's Gate, Captain Elena Vasquez, the same scientist who had evacuated from Vega Prime 2 years earlier, processed refugee requests. She had been promoted to Director of Refugee Affairs for the Human Colonial Authority. A Kretal warrior diplomat named Thex Mara approached her processing station. His black carapace was scarred from battle. His once proud bearing was broken. "I request sanctuary for my ship and crew," he said quietly. 150 warriors, families of those who died fighting the hegemony. Elena checked her database. Thexamara had been one of the council representatives who voted to constrain humanity. She remembered his speech about dangerous human expansion. She approved his request immediately. "Dock at Bay 7, she said. "Medical facilities are available if needed. Housing assignments will be provided within the hour." Thexmara stared at her in confusion. "You know who I am. You know what I voted for." Elena looked up from her console. "I know you're a refugee who needs help. That's all that matters." Similar scenes played out across human space. Millions of beings who had once demanded human submission now found safety in human territory. They were fed, housed, and protected without question or condition. The war in council space continued to rage. Cut off from human technology and expertise, council forces suffered defeat after defeat. Some species surrendered. Others fled. A few fought to the bitter end. But in human space, refugee communities thrived. Human colonies welcomed their former adversaries as neighbors. Human scientists shared their research freely. Human engineers helped rebuild refugee ships. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now serving as Earth's Director of Interspecies Relations, reviewed the daily reports from refugee settlements. Her aide, a young woman named Patricia Kim, looked up from her datapad. "Director, the Sharnath refugees are asking if they can join our research projects. They want to contribute to colony development." Sarah nodded. "Approve it. Anyone who wants to help is welcome." Patricia hesitated. "Director, there's something else. The Council has sent another request for Earth to rejoin. They're offering full membership, equal representation, even joint leadership." Sarah was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars through her office window. In the distance, she could see human ships patrolling the trade routes, protecting both human and refugee vessels from hegemony raiders. "What's Earth's position?" Patricia asked. Sarah smiled slightly. "Patricia, we left the Council because they tried to control us. We're not going back just because they need us. But they're offering everything we wanted." "No," Sarah said quietly. "They're offering everything they think we wanted. What we actually wanted was the freedom to help people without asking permission." She gestured toward the refugee settlements visible on nearby moons. "Look around you. We're doing exactly what we set out to do. We're exploring the galaxy. We're making discoveries. We're helping people who need it. We're building something better." Patricia looked puzzled. "But don't you want recognition? Credit for saving all these refugees?" Sarah turned back to her reports. "Patricia, the best revenge isn't proving your enemies wrong. It's making their opinions irrelevant. Outside the window, human ships continued their patrols. They protected trade routes that served dozens of species. They escorted refugee vessels to safety. They shared their technology freely with anyone who asked. The Galactic Council had tried to control humanity through ultimatums and threats. Humanity had responded by walking away and building something better. Now, as Council space burned and refugees fled to human territory, the true balance of power was clear. The Council had never needed to control humanity. They had needed to learn from them. But pride had made that impossible. And now it was too late. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through force or politics. They had simply shown everyone what was possible when species worked together as equals instead of rulers and subjects.